Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smart and Safe Small Business Podcast. I am Alex Oxford from Tax Valet, and I'm with Michael Veazey. Michael is the convener of the 10K Collective London Mastermind of Amazon sellers, collectively selling over $20 million on Amazon. He's also an Amazon consultant and podcast host of the Amazing FBA. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Alex. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And where are you calling from today?
London, England, although I don't know where else London would find itself, but I always find that an entertaining introduction. But yeah, London, England.
Well, I could tell from your accent. So welcome. So let's start with the first question. Who's your ideal client? Who do you typically work with?
Well, I mean, there's sometimes different questions, those two. So, I mean, my ideal client I'm sometimes lucky enough to get to work with, which is in the 10K Collective and the Million Pound Masterminds, which collectively form the group of masterminds here in London. We normally meet in person at the moment because obviously of the COVID situation at the time of recording, we are online. And they're my ideal clients because they are feisty, they get stuff done, they're action takers. And if you collectively share a great tip or tactic, or even look at a bigger picture strategy, they go away and try and do it, which is really satisfying to see. And of course, everyone learns from that. People also who trust other people and are willing in a understandably defensive world, like Amazon, to open up within a trusted environment, and it's important to create that. So those are my favorite clients. My typical clients in that space are those people. My typical clients in the past have been people who are working from scratch to build a business. I still work with those guys. That's a much more difficult thing to add value because it's much harder to get a business off the ground than to get an existing business and help grow it or make it more defensible.
And is your mastermind open to international businesses or just based in the London region?
That's an interesting question. Yes, insofar as international includes Europe. So we got members flying from Holland, in Netherlands, in Europe, and Spain, Barcelona, a couple of places, for example. So it is quite international in that way. For Americans listening, I mean, at the moment we are online, and I'm considering creating an online version of it. But for the moment, I think one of the values in an online and virtual world is to have offline physical meetings. So from that point of view, the core offering at the moment is London-based. And we'll see if there's enough demand. We can always create a sort of online version in a permanent sense.
Wonderful. So tell me about one specific problem that you help your clients solve.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems, I think, specific problem is an interesting word because in the e-commerce space, particularly Amazon, as you know, Alex, with your work, that specific problems are very, very critical to solve at the sort of execution level. You've got to sort out sales tax, which is full of very specific problems, of course, as we've discussed when you came on my podcast. And you've got to sort out the specifics of exactly, how you get your product from China to America, for example. And those specifics are critically important. Nevertheless, I would say that's an execution level in the business, and you've got to sort that out. And when you're starting from scratch and in the very early days, you have to focus on execution. But the piece that I think is missing for a lot of the people who are my favorite kinds of clients in the 10K Collective and Million Pound Masterminds when they're trying to scale a business is, I think, the bigger picture thinking. And that's why when I was approached by my friend Jason Miles, who is a big business thinker in the e-commerce space and very, very much got strategic level models. It's not just vague chat. It's very specific processes, but at the strategy level, meaning it's going to take a few months to see any results, but it's a long-term business building thing. So I think for me that the single biggest problem that I often see is that people are trying to solve a problem, and the best way I can put it is Elon Musk said about somebody who was interviewing him about his SpaceX thing, and he was saying about the product development process or rocket development. So the trouble with engineers is they're great at optimizing something that shouldn't exist. So that's probably in a nutshell. Like if somebody's optimizing how to launch, 4 brands on Amazon, they're trying to launch a 5th, maybe they shouldn't be doing that. Maybe they should look at the brands that are really working, kill the other ones off and focus on the 2 brands, for example. I mean, that's one very simple example. So, specific problem, but at a big picture scale, I would say something like that. It's that they're too focused on the small things and they need to think about where they're going in the big picture.
So you work with your clients to help them have a refined business strategy for growth. Is that fair to say?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it really, in the 10K collective of masterminds, it's very kind of case study based. So that is to say people share what's working. So sometimes it's very tactical stuff, and that's fine to have an element of that. Sometimes it's sort of slightly bigger sort of execution stuff, like how to, deal with Q4 across all your products, for example. The the bigger picture guys, though, over time it emerges that when they're doing something really good, like they're adding an entire traffic channel, for example. So instead of going off Amazon versus on Amazon, that old debate, they add Google SEO traffic to their Amazon listing, for example. So my one-to-one work tends to be at the moment more with people that are trying to sort out a mess in their business. For example, I often will call accountants or sometimes get hold of people like yourself, sales tax experts, because I say, right, you've got sales. Now we need to get a structure to this business. You need to have a structured process for creating a listing. You need to have a structured process for dealing with your accounts. You need to understand the numbers that are being thrown out in the business reports and that sort of stuff. So quite a lot of my work is that kind of awkward in between space of there's the big picture where people want to go, where they're at now, and then kind of the awkward work of creating structures that are going to get them from the small picture towards the big picture, if that makes sense.
And tell me, what are some typical symptoms that people are experiencing with that problem?
Running around, being crazily busy. There's a brilliant book that still resonates about this. It's quite old now, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, which a lot of people have read. I've read it several times. I reread it a few weeks ago and really just hit me again. It struck such a chord, because that technician's problem, the subtitle of the book is Why Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. And the symptom is the technician, the person doing stuff, is running around doing stuff all day. They're working 12-hour days. They feel out of control. They feel like just if they don't keep spinning plates, they're going to drop and smash everywhere. And I think the solution to that, well, that may be another question, but that's a typical symptom. And the solution to that is really to step back from that and to think about actually what business you want to create, and then start creating structures for it, as it were, on paper.
And what are some common mistakes that people make when they're trying to create structure themselves?
I think sometimes you just can't see the wood for the trees. I mean, you're in a business, and it's this in versus on the business working, right? I mean, people say it a lot, but what I like about the E-Myth Revisited is it puts in very human, concrete terms that any entrepreneur would recognize. There's a little story in it about the person who owns the pie shop and stuff. If you've read it, if you haven't read it, I'd urge everyone to read it. It's not a hard read. It's not a very technical book. So I think that the solution to that thing is that you need to see your business as a whole. And when you're in it, it's hard to see it as a whole because you're inside. You can't see the wood for the tree. So one of the solutions is to get an external view at it. A coach can help, a sounding board is another Amazon seller, and of course a mastermind. And I guess I say that because I offer coaching and mastermind. Sounds a bit self-serving, but to be honest, I started my own mastermind when I first started selling on Amazon because I felt I needed that objective view of what am I doing? Am I going crazy? Does this make sense? Has anyone else tried this? Has anyone got a better solution? That sort of question.
And what's one free valuable action that the audience can implement today that will help them get more structure in their business?
To be honest, I think the first thing you need to do is, it sounds pretentious, it's a prelude to action, but I think rather than plunging into action, you should do something like read the E-Myth Revisited and get your head around the concept, very simple concept, which I can give right now, which is that you've got the technician who does stuff, the entrepreneur who wants to create a business, and the manager who manages people, like processes. And you need to get your head around the fact that you're going to have to wear 3 hats when you're starting off as a solopreneur or even with a small team. And just be very conscious which hat you're wearing when. Are you trying to build a process right now? Are you just getting stuff done right now? Are you sitting back with a coach or a mastermind buddy or whatever, a friend over a beer who gets the business space and just reflecting on your business? Because you can get very muddled when you're acting one way, but you think you're acting the other. So honestly, my free resource would probably be, or the best way of thinking would be that book and grasping that distinction that you talked about.
And do you have a resource that maybe you or your team has created that you could point people to, a free resource for the audience to look at?
Glad you asked. We're just about to launch a podcast, so I have to, plug that. But honestly, that's the reason why we launched the podcast is this exact problem. So the podcast is called The E-commerce Leader, and it's free, of course, like all podcasts, and it's co-hosted with Jason Miles, as I said, runs Winning on Shopify, and it's sold lots and lots and lots of product via Shopify. And also we have a lot of downloadable resources. One book, for example, is called Tiger Proof, which Jason's written, which you could get at the site, which is all about if you got taken down tomorrow, like if you were ill, God forbid, but you might be in this time, or you wanted to walk away from business and have a holiday with a crazy idea. For a lot of small business people, would your business work without you? Which is a very good question. So all of those resources you can get at theecommerceleader.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. So last question here with just about 30 seconds remaining. What's one question that I should have asked you that would be of great value to the audience in the answer?
What's the one book I need to read if I've got a small business in it? But actually, I think I've answered that. I think they're very good questions. I don't have any other questions to ask.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for your time, and looking forward to catching up with you later.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.